Hello again. With the release of Strongholds and Followers, I thought I would do a couple of videos on showing you just how to use some of the new stuff that's in this particular module, notably the Followers and also the battle combat. So in this video we'll look specifically at the Followers and how these have been set up. So once you've opened up Strongholds and Followers module, if you go to your NPCs list, and all of the retainers or the followers have been added in as NPCs, and you can get a list of them just by typing in the brackets R here, and all of them will appear on this list with the R next to them, and these are all the retainers that your player characters might be able to see. So the first thing that the DM would be wanting to do here would be to make a copy of these, because these are essentially their templates really, although there's quite a lot of automation built into them, but they're really just templates, and you'll want to do some editing of them anyway. So the first thing would be to make a copy. So let's take the Cavalier here and just drag him and drop him back down, and you'll see that we now have a Cavalier copy. So we can open that up and we can have a look at the character sheet. Now these can be any race and any alignment, so you'll want to be clicking this button here and unlocking it and then editing this. So this assumes that you're going to be editing this retainer. Obviously you'll want to give it a name, and then you'll also want to give it a race and some kind of alignment. And the rest of it really kind of follows just the rules that are in the book. So the armor class is just the same as the armor class is normally. There are only 3 different armor classes available to retainers. They are simplified player characters really, although they're not player characters in the same way that the NPCs are not player characters. So they're kind of a hybrid between the two, but the armor class works in the same way. So you just put in the actual figure for the armor class there. It doesn't matter what the armor is. And then in here we've got the hit points. Now retainers don't have hit points in the same way as an NPC or a PC do. They have health levels, and the health level is determined by their type, and it's also determined by their level, etc. as well. So we just put a number in there just to point out what the health levels are. You'll also need to edit the speed depending on what the race is, etc. And then we come to the stats. Now you'll notice that all the stats are at 16. This is because the retainer always makes their saving throw at a +3. So basically all skill checks and all saving throws are made at a +3. So what I've done is I've just made all of the stats 16, which kind of looks a bit odd and weird, but that's the way the rules are. And then underneath here we've got specific saving throws where they get a bonus of another 3 onto their normal base +3 for specific saving throws, just like a player character would have. They have proficiency in certain saves or certain abilities, and therefore they would get a higher saving throw for these. So if you're going to be making a saving throw for the Cavalier, a strength saving throw, then when you click the small S button here, then a +6 bonus will appear rather than the +3. And the same thing applies to skills here. The retainers have got certain skills. Obviously they're going to get a base +3 bonus. They get another +2 if the skill is specifically listed in their stat block, and they also get a +1 if that skill is based on one of their primary abilities. So in this case our Cavalier, he's got his base +3 for his athletics. He'll have another 2 because athletics is one of his skills, and because athletics is based on strength, he'll get another +1 for that because strength is one of his saving throws. Whereas his religion, he'll only get the +2 bonus because religion is based on intelligence, and intelligence isn't one of his base saving throws. So that's how the skills will work. Senses and languages, again, that's whatever you want to do. In fact, the passive perception sense really is not mentioned at all in the stat block for the rules, so that can be left as it is. And you can then edit in languages. Now, then we come to the challenge. Now, there isn't a challenge rating, of course, because this isn't a proper NPC. It's a kind of a hybrid PC, but we put in the challenge here as 3, and that is the indication of the level of the follower or the retainer. So in this case, they all start at level 3. So what I've done is I've used the challenge to determine the level of this particular retainer, and so we've put a 3 in there, and when they go up a level, then you'll be able to edit that and then just change this number from 3 to 4 and then from 4 to 5, etc. And that's it for their basic statistics. If we zip down to their actions here, they all have a signature attack, and all of them start with a +6 to hit, and they do a specific amount of damage. There's no weapon necessarily given to them as such, they just have a signature attack, so it can be any melee weapon, etc. And this is the amount of damage they do. Now, they can get magic items, etc., and they can actually increase this bonus as they increase in levels. So you would need to edit that as and when it became necessary to do. And then they also have other signature attacks or other special attacks, which they can have depending on their level. So in this case here, we've got Radiant Lance for 3 uses a day, and they can get an extra amount of radiant damage on a hit. Now, what I've done here is that if we go down to this one here, and we see Fight Me Knave 3 a day, and we see 7th level. So this means that this particular ability is only available once the retainer gets to 7th level. So this one here doesn't actually say anything about levels, so that means that they get it at 3rd level, so it's a starting ability. If we have a look at the spellcasting ability for this Cavalier, it says 7th spellcasting ability, etc. We've got in the actual plus and save for the spells, and it says here 5th level, 3 slots lesser restoration. If lesser restoration isn't a 5th level spell, this 5th level is actually indicating that the NPC gets this at 5th level. And if we have a look down at the actual spell, it shows you in here, it says 5th level, 3 slots, even though the spell is a level 2 spell. Normally this would say 2nd level. So that's how I've done that. I've kind of finessed this, so you'll find this in all the spellcasters, that the actual level here determines the level at which the NPC gets, or when the retainer gets the skill. Not necessarily what the actual level of the spell is, which you would normally find. And once this NPC goes onto the combat tracker, then it'll fill in the 5 or the spell here onto the level 5 thing to show the spell slots as being 3 level 5 spell slots. We can see that probably a bit better if we take one of the pure casters like the Enchanter, for example. And the Enchanter just has spells. Their signature attack is the Shocking Grasp spell. So we've got this here, the Enchanter, 7th level spellcaster, and we've got all the spells listed. The cantrip, so that's their signature attack. The 3rd level, that's the spell that they also get, their special ability that they get at 3rd level, and then Fireball at 5th, and then Confusion at 7th. And this is all put in here. It's done this way so that the spells are all here, and it makes it easier to use the player character or use the NPC by the players. So that comes to the next question then, is how we actually use these within Fantasy Grounds, and how you can give the players control of these NPCs so that they can actually control them. Now, I've covered this in another video, but briefly, this is the method here. We need to open up the combat tracker. We need to find our Cavalier copy here. We haven't bothered renaming him. We need to put him on the combat tracker, and then we need to make him friendly to the NPC, to the player characters. So this is now a friendly character to the players. Then we need a map, and we then take the NPC and drag it and put it onto the map. And then finally we take this symbol here and we drag that and we drop it onto the player character who's going to have this as their retainer. And if we have a look at the player character screen, we can see that Deneric now has the Cavalier as a retainer, and Deneric can mouse over. If we mouse over these things like athletics, etc., if we mouse over all of this, the signature attacks, Deneric now has full control of the NPC, can move them on the map, make attacks, etc., etc. Now, the one thing that the player characters can't do is they can't edit the NPC, because as you can see up here, it's locked. So the Dungeon Master is going to have to level up the retainer when they get more hit points or whatever. We can have a brief look. I mean, the combat just is pretty much the same as you would do normal combat. There are various rules which you'll need to read up on as to when the NPC attacks, etc. But when the player character attacks, then the NPC can also make an attack. And sometimes they can make an attack on their own, even though the player hasn't made an attack. But it's just exactly the same thing. So once it comes round to the NPC's turn, then they would just target enemies as normal. I mean, we can put, let's see if we can find a monster. Let's put a ruby dragon on just for fun. So they can just attack monsters in the same way as anybody else does, just holding down the CTRL, making the attack. The combat tracker has disappeared, of course. But yes, they can just attack as normal. They just make their normal attack rolls. I mean, this is a DM screen, but it's the same thing. They just make their normal attack rolls. They make their normal damage rolls, etc. And when they get attacked themselves, then they have to make a saving throw to see whether or not they survive the attack or not. And again, this would just be done by the player by finding their constitution element here and just clicking on the save. It'll have to be done manually. You'll have to manually work out whether or not that saving throw that they've just made actually comes within the rules and whether they get a hit or not. And if they do get a hit, then the DM will need to add in a wound, because the normal rules don't apply. So the DM will just need to add a wound into the combat tracker to show that the NPC has taken wounds, and then once they've got to 0, etc., then they'll become unconscious, etc., just in the same way. So we can't fully automate everything in the same way as we can automate it for a fully fledged player character. But or indeed for an NPC, because the normal rules don't really apply as far as things like damage, etc. is concerned. But we've got enough automation in here, as much as we can anyway, to make it easier to run within Fantasy Grounds. So I think that's it, but if you have questions or anything like that, leave them in the comment section below the forum post that this video is linked to, and we'll see if we can help you out. But anyway, thanks for watching, and have fun. Cheers now.